Hello, this is Dan Shea with Veterans for Peace Forum. It's the first show of the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. We were off during the holiday season, so it's nice to be back, but there's been a lot of things that have been going on. I have a great program tonight. I have two young women who are making history. And it's not just talking about history, but making history. And they're part of movements that I think your grandchildren are going to be talking about in the future. Angela Davis was just here at Portland State here the other day, and I wasn't able to make that, but you know, I read her books, I followed her, I saw her when she was out in Hillsborough last year, and it just, you know, here she still is dealing with these same issues that we've been dealing with from back in my days in the 60s. And there were strides that were made, but we keep coming back because there's this sort of reaction by people. There's a great book that I like to tell people about, and that is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And if you can get a little shot of that, that'd be great. There you go. And she really started looking at this. She was an attorney working with a lot of people that were in prison, and she would, you know, she wanted to kind of take a look at this, and at first she just thought, hey, kids are getting in trouble. You know, she's defending them for their rights to speak out. But one of the things that happened, she started looking into it, the judges, the paroles, everything that was happening to young black men. And she started doing the statistics and the research, and she started looking at how many people were being put in prison, taken off the streets and put in prison. And then we, you know, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people that have been going through this after so-called Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement. It changed everything. It didn't change anything. So this is one of the issues, and this book is a great way to kind of get a feel about why all of a sudden, after all the suffering people have done, it was too much. It's too much to take anymore, and people are standing up and speaking out. There's also the story of these 43 student teachers in Mexico who were going to either do a protest or were going somewhere, and the police and possibly the military and came around and kidnapped. They killed a number of people, and 43 students went missing. So we're going to talk about that. Police brutality in this country exists. Police brutality in Mexico exists. There's a corruption of government. There's a corruption throughout the world. And we have to ask, why is these things happening? Not just in this country, but all around the world. And I think there are a lot of reasons that these things are happening. But I also wanted to tell you a little bit before, just kind of introduce you. We know each other from doing events, but I don't think they've ever heard how I got involved and how my story sort of, when I was a young kid, you know, in my neighborhood, I grew up in southeast Portland, over in what they derogatorily call Felony Flats. You know, it was a 2-bedroom house with 6 kids. My dad was a bartender, raising all of us on tips, you know, and but you know, the economy actually wasn't so bad even on that. I never felt poor, you know, but it was an all-white neighborhood pretty much. Down the street from me, the end of one block, there was a family that was Native American. The mother was supposed to be a Native American princess from the Canita tribe, and her husband was Mexican American, and I used to play with their son Junior, and I actually, my mom still knows the mother. I think her name was Dolores. I can't remember the full name anymore. And then just across the street from there was only one black family in the neighborhood that I knew. Okay, and to me, you know, I'm talking about being 10 years old, and so it was like they could have been 20. I thought they were old, but you know, he had this garden out there, and he had these hunting dogs out in the back, and I would walk by there from school and stop by and talk, and we would talk a little bit, and he'd tell me about the dogs and this gardening and stuff like that. And the people across the street from there called out to me and said, you know, the N-word, N-word lover, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I just, not that I hadn't heard it, because it's been on television, it'd been on a lot of movies I'd seen, but I just never heard it said face to face like that, and I didn't know, and I felt the derogatoriness of it, the meanness of it. And I went home and I asked my mother, I says, you know, what does this mean, really, you know? And she says, she told me something and says, look, I don't want you ever to use that word. She actually made me go wash my mouth out with soap.
Oh, God.
And she said, you have to realize, you know, that you may be part black. She says, you know, your father was born in Panama. Your grandmother's Panamanian. And that's a mixture of a lot of things. So your dad used to grow up as being called Mick Spick, you know. And then, so all that time when I was young, I always thought of myself as a person of color. My brother was dark, you know, dark-skinned, and I had the privilege of white skin, and I never knew what that difference was. But I saw over the years, and I probably didn't know it until after Vietnam, as when my brother came back, he was having trouble. We both went to Vietnam in the same company in platoon, you know. In Vietnam, and he stayed and basically saved my life when I came, and I came home because he took my place. Yeah. But when he came back, I noticed over the years he had always been getting in a little bit of trouble. People punished him a little bit harder. And I finally said, you know, I think this is because you're dark skinned. They're looking at you as Latino, you know, Mexican even, you know. And he was in denial of that until just shortly before his death. And we talked about it, you know. And I says, I never thought about that all those years. And I realized, even though I had taken the Latino identity of being a part of MECHA and a number of other things, being very active at school when I went back at 40, and my family would always be taking the Irish side, you know, they wanted or the German side from my mother's side. And so you had all these different people talking about these things, and I noticed racism very young. But I thought, you know, the civil rights movement, we made it through Vietnam. I saw racism in Vietnam. I saw, you know, so-called race riots. But I never really found anybody that was, you know, I was actually surrounded by a bunch of young black men after I came out of a bar. And that's right. I don't know what happened in the United States, but something happened in the United States that spurred it. And these guys surrounded me, but they, you know, some guy took a swing at me, and I fell down, but I was drunk, and I didn't feel anything. People were kicking me and calling me things, but not one of those people ever really touched me. There was never anybody touched. It was just faking out each other. And when the MPs came, this guy helps me up, has my glasses on. He says, "Get out of here, man."
Don't tell me.
So you know, I mean, people don't want to hate each other.
Right.
People don't want to hurt each other. People don't want to kill each other. So what is it that causes police to begin to harass people in their neighborhoods? What is it that causes them to fall for that whole racist scheme when there is so much information out there that we've been dealing with for years that we're supposed to be past all that, but it doesn't seem to happen?
Well, one of the things that I had discussed the other day, we had a meeting with Daryl Turner and a couple of the members of Don't Shoot Portland over at the Center for Intercultural Organizing. We just we wanted to do a debrief from the dialogue which you attended, and that came up. We were talking about basically the school board meeting that just happened this past Tuesday, and how to a lot of people in there it felt like a public lynching, because we had basically been put in a position where, because we came in peacefully, asking for our voices to count the first time, and this was a beautiful scene. There were kids dancing and families happy and everybody getting a voice, and even parents crying saying, wow, we got people, now they heard us, you know, because we had done this, did a protest or demonstration about a week ago. And so the parents had felt empowered, and they felt like, okay, let's do this again. If we can prove to them that we deserve a voice in these matters, then we'll win this victory and we'll get that voice. And that's a pattern that shows a commitment to make a change in their way of communicating, you know. And these are parents that have felt marginalized when it comes to their children's education and being able to receive information and services to get them out of poverty. So for them to be heard is a victory for them. Yes. But when we went back to the school board meeting, the district had contacted their police, and they had the police there as a tool of intimidation. It was a vehicle for hindrance of our ability to feel free and powerful again. And so you watch these families and these children go in, and this was a whole nother scene. It was just sad and melancholy, and when they sat down, you know, they were like scared, and when their time was up, some of them just jumped up immediately instead of taking the extra time to understand who, you know, like the protest, the demonstration, the civil disobedience. They weren't able to do that, and it was a hindrance to really not the system that is supposed to be in place to support them in their children's education, but to them as humans, feeling like they had a right to use this type of instrument, freedom of assembly, to show the board how they felt about their children's education, to ask for an opportunity to be involved. But bringing the police into it as a vehicle to hinder that, that's what they have been used as for a very long time. When we talk about nobody wants to hurt you, I know from my own family's experience, and one of the reasons that I'm on the front line with Don't Shoot Portland is because people do hurt people with impunity. Yeah. They do smash them and shoot them and beat them and lynch them. They do those sick things to people. And you have to have a certain character, or you have to have some type of programming that says that it's okay.
Well, I think that's something that's really important. One thing I should do here, which I haven't done, and that is to introduce you as Teressa Raiford. And how do you say the last?
Raiford. Oh, and Mazique is my family's name. Mazique? Mazique. Okay. That's back to Natchez, Mississippi.
Ah, okay. And Teressa is a lead organizer and a founder of Don't Shoot Portland, PDX, and the state director, Oregon, what? Unite Women.
And I'm former state director. I resigned a couple of months ago because of all my activities where I shifted my focus, but I'm still very involved.
You were a candidate for city council?
Yes,
when
sir.
Was that?
2012 against Amanda Fritz.
Okay. Okay. And
still banger.
And then I also want to get a little bit of information about your past, but I want to first introduce Maria D Silva, who a long time we met many years ago when it was the anniversary of Pablo Neruda's 100th anniversary of his birthday. I remember that.
It was a PSU, and you took beautiful pictures of me and my husband Ignacio at that time, remember?
Yeah.
Beautiful pictures.
And you sang beautifully, and we read poetry, and it was a great event.
Yeah.
And I just saw that just recently. I don't know if you saw a post I did on Facebook, but they found some new writings, new poems of Neruda just recently.
That's right.
So it's always I think that's when I really got introduced and interested in poetry. I never really was before.
I think that was what, 2003?
Something like that. I can't remember now. It's been so long. But and then of course we ran across each other constantly. But you have, you're educator. When you say para educator, floor educator. Former son instructor, senior community organizer, and interpreter. We're at Rigler. What is that? Rigler Elementary.
Rigler Elementary. That's where my daughter goes.
PTA Bilingual Community Liaison Board Member, founder of what's the Bajo
Salario, Low Wages Band.
And you've had a number of different bands over the years, and you also did the Aztec dancing.
Yeah, that's what I'm putting more attention this year to the workout, and to really bring more teachings to the whole community about, you know, the Aztec astrology and the Aztec, you know, traditions, and you know, this is a very ancestral, you know, teachings that are important, you know, for us to be sharing here in Portland. And I just joined one of the, you know, most amazing, you know, Cuatlicues Cualpuli, which means, you know, it's a circle of Aztec dancers, you know, in Northeast. It's the first one in Northeast, and also is led by, you know, one of our regular teachers, you know, and also friend band member Santa, you know, Miss Amparo Garcia. You know.
Nice. Well, and it, too, in these ceremonies, it's also a sort of respect for the earth, the four winds, you know. I mean, it's all of these things that you start off with respect before you even begin an event, you know.
Yeah, and it teaches a lot about the simple life, you know. It teaches about, you know, learning to live in, you know, in peace with no violence, and also, you know, to respect for each other, to live in unity, you know, to respect your elders, all those values that are hard to find nowadays, you know, here in the United States. So that's my emphasis with the Aztec dances, you know, try to learn myself. You know, what were the teachings pre-Columbian times, before the Spaniards came and the colonization, you know, what was that, and how was, you know, the Aztec Purépechas. There is hundreds of indigenous communities in Mexico that are still, you know, alive, and that we do not know.
And
how
many dialects? I mean, there are hundreds, number of languages,
hundreds.
Right?
You know, in Oaxaca there is at least 100.
Yeah.
You know, just to begin, I'm from, you know, originally from Michoacan, so there is, you know, dozens of, you know, different languages and dialects, and, you know, and also, you know, Parmayan from, you know, east of Mexico. There is also, you know, different languages.
That's what I keep telling my wife. She's part Mayan, you know.
Yeah.
Her family was from San Antonio, you know. So, but she was Chicana because she was in California when she was born.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to find out is a little bit of your history, where you grew up, and how you came to Portland. Or
Yeah, well, I was born in Northeast Portland. Yeah, my mom was, my dad was, my grandpa, Joe Payton, was born here. My grandmother, Big Jerry, the Mazique part of my family, she moved up here from Natchez, Mississippi, with her little sister, Albertine Bell, and their kids. So I'm pretty much like a fourth-generation Oregonian. My grandfather's mom was born in McMinnville. She was the first seamstress, or she was the seamstress for Fred G. Meyer, lived up in Southwest off 2nd. The house is still there. Had about 15 kids. They all grew up in Portland. So Portland is pretty saturated with my family as far as on both sides of the spectrum. Mom, dad, you know, and all the brothers and sisters that come with that. So growing up in Northeast Portland, around 96, I moved to Texas because of all the gang violence and things that were happening here. I had started a family, so I didn't think that Portland was where I wanted my kids to be, because it seemed like the interaction that we had with the gangs that came up here from California was basically destroying our community. And to me, I thought it was going to destroy the future of my children, because in the area that we lived in, there was so much going on to where it seemed like we became numb to the violence that was happening in our community. So I figured, you know, let me remove myself, take my kids somewhere in the country, and just have a simple life and build, you know, healthy, strong children, and then I'll come back.
What year did you say that?
96. Yeah, moved to Dallas, Texas. Yeah. So. Yeah, I ended up raising my kids down there, stayed down there for about 15 years, came back to visit. My daughter wanted to go to school here, so I came back to visit so that she could go to art school. And I ended up losing my nephew while we were here. And so he was lost to gang violence. One of the same reasons why I thought that we needed to get out of here. I come home to visit, and I'm ending up, you know, going to a funeral. So I immediately got involved with things, you know. I figured my nest is empty. My daughter's going to do whatever she's going to do with her life. But I needed to figure out what I could do here from the skills that I learned in Dallas as far as being active in my community. What could I bring home to Portland so that we could change the landscape for these kids?
Yes. I had, when I came back from Vietnam, one of the things that happened to me was a friend of mine who I went to high school with. African American kid, black kid, who was he was a Golden Gloves boxer. You know, he was kind of a friend of mine, and I remember him living up about 33rd and Fremont at the time, and his kid was shot down by a drive-by. You know. And I'm thinking, I just came back from a war, and this is happening. But as I started thinking about that stuff and started looking into it later, this gang violence that started to happen seemed to me to be connected in the whole idea of gentrification. The whole idea that I think people don't even think about, and people would say, no, you're exaggerating. I said, wait a minute, how come every time that this gentrification, the gang violence comes before, and then people are forced out, and the property values go down, and then the developers come in and they start buying up the property cheap.
And not to mention the criminology.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they criminalize the community members that live there.
Yeah.
There's people, when I came home, that said they were forced out, where the police would tell them, you know, I'll put your grandson's going to jail if you don't get out of this neighborhood, you know, and would basically give them no choice but to sell their houses. And when I talked to people that were living here, they were like, oh yeah, these people were selling their houses for dirt cheap. Well, they don't realize the story behind it. They're assuming everybody was a crackhead.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of intimidation and harassment, and then bodies within the community that had a vested interest in, you know, selling property and making a lot of money. And I'm not saying any of those guys still exist, but there was a lot of exploitation of the community to receive it, you know, throughout that whole gentrification phrase. And just imagine, when I came back from 96 to, you know, to 2010, 2011, running around the neighborhood, I didn't know where the heck I was half the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Because the neighborhood, you know, the older neighborhood actually was pretty grounded, and it had families that had been there in generations, and everybody knew everybody, and you had a community. I remember going into these houses that were just absolutely beautiful, gardens in the background, you know, and I'm trying to figure out what people were talking about, the racist stuff that people said, you go to the black neighborhood, you know, you got to watch that.
Those black kids were sharp, weren't they?
But you also have the passive-aggressive, you know, gentrification. Like, you know, I've been victim of, you know, just living around the corner of Tin Shed and Fields Cafe. You know, most of the neighbors in that neighborhood, you know, have been people that have moved out recently in the last 2-3 years, and just because we are low income or because I don't pay money, you know, for someone to come and do the yard, you know, the type of, you know, harassment is just tremendous. You know, they call the police because my roommate has a car on our driveway, which is our private property, you know, parked there and doesn't have plates, or because we have, you know, some junk in the car, they call the police, or because we have an extra piece of furniture on the porch.
What is wrong with you, anyhow? You know?
They call so many entities, you know, to make our life easy. Actually, our neighbors, you know, who they are from San Jose, California, they work for banks. They actually have come into our house where we have acoustic music gatherings, you know, celebrations, to come bang on our doors, yell at us, insult the whole crowd, to ask us, you know, not to play music. It's been, you know, it's been pretty vicious, you know, like this type of, you know, see, even though I've been there for more than 15 years on Alberta Street, and they just moved last year, and, you know, they're Caucasians, you know. It's pretty bad, pretty vicious, you know, houses around, you know. I've seen the black people being moved out of our neighborhood, you know. And this house is remodeled and sold for $400,000, $500,000.
Well, I think when we're talking about violence, why people do these things, I know that when in the military, you know, there's a book by this guy named Lieutenant Grossman, who does this whole history of war and how the military had a hard time getting people to kill each other. But they began from the Roman eras on. You know, it talks about how they did the things. They had to create distance. Spear, face to face, hand to hand. It was hard to just kill somebody. So they ended up with spears, then bombs, then rockets, then gas, then all this technology in order to create distance between people so that they don't see each other face to face. Keep people isolated.
Wow.
Right. In boot camp, one of the things I noticed right away was first they call you names, then they call, you know, they shame you, and your dignity becomes just like you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, psychological effect. And then they start talking about other people and races, and especially for us it was the Vietnamese, the Gooks, all these various things that they'd have to dehumanize somebody. Well, you grow up in a world that I wanted to kind of. I was looking at something I was reading about this sort of dehumanization of people through those books, through books that people read in the libraries that over a period of time, which are telling people, that black people are lesser than somebody else, or Mexicans shouldn't be here. Yeah. All of these various racist language, but these are for little kids to read. Yeah,
the racism is taught. Kids are not born racist. Unfortunately, parents, teachers also. Unfortunately, they contribute to the problem. Like we were talking earlier about some of those racist books. Like Mark Twain. Uncle Barry Finn. Like Dr. Dolittle. Dolittle, yeah. Ten Little, I don't want to say the word, but there's been a lot of racism that's been taught to children. We have experience, just like working with children. They fear that sometimes kids see us because we have black hair. Or dark skin,
or because their parents pull them away from us when we walk past them.
Even though I love kids. I mean, working with kids, since 2007 full time. So, but there is all these fears and ideas that people of color. Media has also demonized a lot.
That's right.
People of color.
Yeah. So I mean, so we know it becomes pervasive throughout the community in society because of it's taught. That's what I was trying to get at. That somehow taught. They had to teach us how to kill, and to teach us to kill was not that we couldn't think. We were not supposed to think. We had to obey orders. We could not kill. We could not fire on somebody without permission. So they would tell you, you have to kill somebody. So you did not make the decision. You had to do it. This is how I think it starts to happen to people. They become this psychological indoctrination. And it's brainwashing, basically, that causes this. That's why I say people don't want to do this. If you start them off as children together, they're not going to be doing that. They're their brothers and their sisters. Right. How do we teach humanity? How do we unteach this? And I think what I was so amazed about in this whole movement of don't shoot, and from Ferguson on, was that so many people came out. So many people stood together.
Breaking down the isolation.
They broke down the isolation. And who stood in the way? The politicians and the cops.
Right. And the police union, which is one of the worst.
And so, but for me, one of the first things I was thinking too is that something's happening throughout the world, I think, and we had Arab Spring, we have all these revolutionary movements that are going on. We have now. I really think this is a revolution. I think this is a revolutionary movement. We had Occupy before it, but this is an extension. This is people are saying, maybe that was just the first step.
This was 50 years, and really 100 years in the making. If you look at revolution,
and I think that one of the nice things that happened, with the Ferguson, movement that started there, it was that, people, common people, understood that there was not only something unfair, but that there was something unjust, and that there was unjust laws, and that the abuse of authority was way over, the hand of the police. That there's been a lot of damage done, that we've been silenced for so many years. I myself became involved because I known about Cesar Chavez, I known about Dr. King, and they've been some of the heroes in this country to raise awareness and to fight against unjust laws. Segregation is one of the the issues we have nowadays. You know, the fact that people don't want to talk about race, or you know, the police brutality is, you know, is one of the good examples of we have forgotten of our, you know, tradition of civil rights movement to revolt against the government when they are, you know, using the police to protect, you know, rich people's, multinationals, capitalism's interests, you know.
Yeah.
And we can do that, you know. We just need to, you know, unify and unite, and we can do it. I was today at the Capitol, the Step Capitol in Salem, and I was just so happy to see, you know, for the first time, many organizations, you know, working together toward, you know, this bill of 15 now, and it's you know, if we get the $15 an hour, you know, living wage bill passed, you know, it will really gonna help everyone, including people of color, you know, to move from, you know, some of the many issues that we're facing in our communities.
You want to talk about the?
Sure.
What is it? The four reasons?
Sure. Yeah. There. One of the things that I've been, you know, sharing with our brothers and sisters from the African American community and Don't Shoot is, you know, the fact that they've been experiencing, you know, a lot of police brutality and killings for so many years. And in Mexico, we have too. And interesting is the same, you know, is the same brutality, is the same catalyst, is the same pretense of drug war that is happening in Mexico, you know, to kill, to fund the army, to fund the Mexican government, which we know is corrupt, you know, to kill our own, you know, students and our own people. You know, there's been more than 23,000 people killed, you know, in the last, you know, few years. And that is not something isolated, you know, it's happening in Missouri, it's happening everywhere here in the United States. And we need to unify. So we would like to invite people to come to the Mexican consulate on Monday. This Monday, the 26th, is going to be it's going to be 4 months since the 43 students from Ayotzinapa, Guerrero, Mexico, were forced kidnapped by the Mexican government, the army, and the state, and the drug lords who took 43 of the students of the Burgos University, which is the rural teaching, you know, students who these are the students that were raising awareness about many things, but some of the awareness they were doing, it was to raise awareness about, you know, Nestora Salgado, which is a woman. She's actually, you know, binational from the United States, who she will go to Mexico to visit her family. And she knew that the people, the corrupted elected officials, the syndico and the mayor and all the people in power who were elected in part for the money of the drug cartels, were committing all these kidnaps, these thieves, stealing of cows, you know, taking people out of their land. She was coming as a, you know, visitor, knowing that it was happening, and she told the people, you know, let's take over the state, you know, the municipal, you know, police office, and let's make sure we hold the corrupt elected officials accountable. And she did. The people supported her, and they instituted, you know, the rural policemen, so they will prevent this corruption from our own officials. Well, later on, the army, you know, of course, did not like that. The government did not like that. You know, it started to happen in many different cities, municipalities, and she's now, you know, in jail, and the government says they're going to free her, but, you know, she's in isolation for many months. You know, they don't let her even see the sun. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that the students were, you know, raising funds, you know, because the Mexican government has been cutting their subsidies. Some of the subsidies that they've been cutting was their food. And there is many issues, you know, that, you know,
For a long.
that led to this, you know,
Yeah.
to this. So.
There's a great book again that kind of gives a great history of Mexico, chronicling the power and revolt by John Gibler. And this is Mexico Unconquered. It gives a great history. It's a wonderful book. I read that. There's another one by John Ross, I think his name is, and he kind of goes through it. It's either one or two of these authors. I can't remember which one. Also did a smaller, thinner book that really covers the drug war and talks about. I mean, people don't want those drugs, and they don't want the cartel in their little towns, but they're pervasive all over. This one guy had his. The drugs were being sold on his house. They killed his daughter. He came out and spoke out against it, and within a few days they had killed him.
Right.
These are things that happen so quickly that, and then the only way it can happen is it has to happen with the police. I would not, I believe in, marijuana should be legal, mainly to take it away and out of the power of all these people. And I had friends, many over the years. That's one reason I wouldn't ever buy marijuana or anything at the time, and is because I knew that these cartels were killing people, and I didn't want to be a supporter of that, like my own little boycott. But the legalization of, I fought hard for the legalization of marijuana, and I'm glad it's happening here. Because we start to take that prohibition out of it, the whole drug wars, the U.S. used it as a means to actually go in and disrupt the students, the revolutionaries in Colombia and Mexico and El Salvador and Guatemala and various places, and use the drug wars as a sort of an excuse to arm and militarize the police to go after these people and dishonest them.
It's not only the police; it's also the army.
Yes.
We have more than 40,000, state troopers, and there is a lot of transnationals. There is a lot of American companies, you name it. Companies from first world developed countries coming to Mexico for many reasons. The fracking. In Puebla there is like 38 at least projects that the transnationals, many of them Americans, wanna mine. They wanna get the gold, they wanna get the silver, they wanna get all these minerals, and the people have always said, no, this is our home, this is our legacy, this is our farming town. If you do this fracking, all these dams is gonna not only kill the endangered species, but it also is gonna kill their farmlands. And they have said no, but the Mexican government keep electing and putting all these puppets in place, so they will say yes to all these mining companies, to all these multinationals. So I think it's also, the U.S. government that we know that they're preparing, to not only, spy in every U.S. citizen, but also in Mexico. So with this excuse of the, Plan Merida, the Merida Initiative, funding then, 13, more than $1,300 million for the Mexican government to buy more sophisticated weapons for the army, for the police, from our dollars. This is our dollars that could be going to better schools, to provide, parks and recreations for our young kids here in Portland and everywhere. But they're giving it to, to the Mexican government so they can have more, sophisticated, equipment, so they can smash the people that are raising up, the people that are raising awareness.
Yeah.
And we've been told by the Zapatistas, the liberation movement, since 1994 when they rose up, that NAFTA trade agreements, Merida Initiative, were all part of this conspiracy of the transnationals, of capitalism, neoliberalism, so they can go, to Mexico and all over the world to, not only, fund, their own projects to take the gold, to mine, you know, but it was also, you know, to control the people and have a cyber spying on every single people in the planet.
That's right. You know, I just, you know, it reminds me of Edward Galeano's book, Open Veins of Latin America, that they tried to give to Obama, and one of the meetings in the, what was it, the Organization of States in Latin America, and Obama was attacked by the right wing in this country not to pick up that book, you know, don't read it, not even to read a page out of it. But it's the whole history of this,
Right.
this exploitation of people.
Yeah.
Exploitation of taking over people's resources, lands, and here in this country we're talking about the neighborhoods and controlling people.
Everything she said sounds exactly
Definitely.
like what's happening here.
That's
in the
right.
last, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's by design, and it's happening
is.
around the world, and that's why you see what's happening as a global movement. That's why you have people, like if you even, you know, hit one of our hashtags, Black Lives Matter or Reclaim MLK, you're going to see people from around the world
That's right.
protesting, you know, against odds. So it's not anything different. We know that we're speaking the same language, and that we're bleeding the same blood, and we're losing the same children in this war. And it's a war against our human rights, you know. They like to say the war on drugs and all these other things. Those wars fund the violation of our human rights,
That's right.
you know, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Right.
So now there's another event coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, this movie called The Throwaways that was directed, is about this brother named Ira McKinley who lives up in the East Coast, and he wanted to make a movie about the issues with mass incarceration. And Michelle Alexander did make a comment. She rated his movie. Spike Lee's director and editor, one of his editors, actually helped with the editing. And so this is going through national distribution, and it's going to be kicking off here in Portland tomorrow night at the Clinton Street Theater, 7 p.m. I think it's going to be great. You got to go to the website. It's thethrowawayesdoc.org. And,
Or .com, I think.
.com, okay, yeah.
But you can just Google Clinton Street Theater and bring up the events that are happening there, and that'll be another way to look at it.
Right.
Or
Go to the
Don't Shoot Portland.
Go to the Don't Shoot Portland page. We got a link on there from the director, so.
And they can also Google the group that is actually working with the, you know, protest on a weekly basis at the Mexican consulate. Is called Somos 43 Solidarios, which, you know, literally means we are 43 solidarity folks, you know, supporting Ayotzinapa, and is in Facebook. And hopefully they can make it, you know, tomorrow or, you know, Monday or both. But Monday is going to be the protest at the Mexican consulate from 11 to 2.
Do they do that every Monday, or is that at...
No, what happened on Monday is the 8th, you know, is the 8th, you know, national and international call to resist, to raise awareness about that. It's been 4 months, yet these students are still missing. Only one of them has, you know, been, you know, recognized on, you know, the, I don't want to say of the body, because, you know, apparently there is a theory that they were incinerated and burned, and they were able to get, you know, the identity of, from these little fragments of bone and DNA of one of them, of you know, one of the students. But there is 42 who are still missing, and that's gonna be the protest on Monday from 11 to 2 at the Mexican consulate. The address is 1305 Southwest 12 in downtown Portland. And again, you know, please connect with that group. You know, they provide a lot of good information, and it's you know, SOMOS, you know, number, sign of number 43, SOLIDA.
I found it just by going almost 43.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
And so
but usually they are there on Tuesdays or Wednesdays.
Yeah, I just I looked online this morning. The Guardian had something that came out. It said the students, there was 2 students that survived, and Mexico's they call it the Night of Bloody Horror, and that are accusing the army and the police together. the two escaped are getting ready to testify. That'll be coming up soon. One thing it did mention here too is that Mexico's toxic mix of violence, impunity, organized crime, corruption has left 100,000 dead and an estimated 30,000 disappeared since 2006. But these 43 massacred or kidnapped students has shaken Mexico to its core.
Yeah. That's right.
And when I saw that, I thought, you know, Mike Brown shook this country to its core.
Right.
Harry Gardner shook this country to its core. Something is waking people up, and they're coming in solidarity, like you said, with the 15 now, you know, the minimum wage movement, people coming together. The only way we're going to me, I feel a lot of these things happen because people, we don't have education, we don't have parks, we don't have community together. It's a system of creating poverty and no alternatives, and instead of having unemployed on the streets, throw them in jail, make profit off of them. You know,
it's
that's
too
the
much
whole
government
thing.
involvement in our day-to-day services, where there used to be grassroots organizations or professional services within your community that provided outreach to families and different needs of the community. Now everything is centralized within our government structures. I mean, every time money comes in through the federal government, it goes right into the county or the city or the state. And if people at a grassroots level have to compete against those big industries for money that they need to directly engage with the community, then we're always going to be at a deficit. There's too many barriers in between the people and the policy makers. So there's not enough to trickle down that's going to support their needs to get out of poverty.
And I think they've been, you know, hurting us so much in so many levels, where we get to the point where we lose the fear and we come out to speak out. You know, it's like, you know, recognizing me and my sister Teressa, you know, even though we're from, you know, we were born in two different countries, you know, the pain that, you know, she feels of seeing her brothers, and the pain that I feel seeing my brothers, you know, in Mexico, being, you know, killed, you know, being the 99%, knowing that there is a 1%, and no matter how much I work or participate, and a good citizen, I'm still a low-income person. You know, there is Mr. Slim. He's one of the richest person, if not the richest person in the world. Like, he's from Mexico.
Yes.
You know, so there is a lot of things that we have in common. You know, like I've been protesting on the PPS, the Portland information as a parent from the Portland Public School Board. I've tried, you know, to register to do public speaking. They only allow 6 people, and yet they don't sign me up unless I use email account of someone who has a, you know, like Caucasian's last name, or I use the name of someone saying, oh, this person told me to register me. And I've been very, you know, I've been speaking, I've gone to a lot of meetings, you know, trying to help my daughter's school, to the point where they don't listen. I actually think they never listen. And now I have my son going to transition into kindergarten. They're still not listening. They're still making the same mistakes. They're still not giving enough information, like, you know, not, you know, giving us, you know, the meetings that they're supposed to be doing to transition kids now to kindergarten, even though it might seem it's too early. You know, when you have kids with special needs like myself, you know, is, you know, the information, the work that PPS needs to be doing is very important, very crucial. They promise, they do mediocre job, poor job, you know, they need to be held accountable. And yet they did not give us the opportunity, you know, on the January 13th to speak out. They didn't give us the opportunity to speak out last Tuesday. So what do we have to do to get the attention? Well, maybe follow Dr. King's steps, you know, to demand, to protest, the right action, civil disobedience. That's how he was able to, you know, better some of the segregation and racist laws of this country.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember also, you know, the Black Panther Party movement that started out, and you know, people took this sort of idea that they were anti-white. You know, in fact, they were saying power to the people, all the people, and they were going into the community and having breakfast and first kind of daycare kind of programs
Ron
for
Herndon's
kids.
programs,
And you know, I was always amazed at this whole history that people have this whole different idea when they talk about it. People that have never studied or thought about it or were never really a part of it, and they isolated themselves from it. But there's a great movie out by Lee. You remember him? It's called All Power to the People.
Oh yeah.
And it's a great film. He's come to Portland a few times. He was with the Black Panther Party many years ago, but after they started going after like the Shabta Shakur and other people, they're still trying to go after people that were in the movement many years later that have been out. He won't appear anywhere anymore, you know.
Yeah, well, it's ridiculous.
It's like going underground again.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that, you know, amazing people like Shabta Shakur has to, you know, live in Cuba for most of her life, because if she comes to the United States, she's still, you know, in the most wanted, you know, list, and it's ridiculous when, you know, all she was doing.
And we've got these crackers with what is it? Open carry. Walking right into government offices and with machine gun. They were just something here up in Seattle, and they, you know, they tell them they got to leave, but they don't do anything. Black Panther Party, boy, all of a sudden it was a war. It was, you know, the police came in with the FBI and CIA, I'm sure too. You know, all these people involved in this stuff to go after the Black Panther Party and shoot Fred Hampton. You know, just killed him in his sleep. And I mean, there's so many things that people need to learn and understand this history. We're going through it again.
Yeah.
Right.
And we haven't stopped going through it. We just continued, and we just didn't do anything about it. And I don't want to say that, you know, the Black America or the people in our country that have been oppressed have been quiet about it. But the system has been complacent. The system hasn't been forced to do anything to support them or their needs. I mean, when you go to an organization for help nowadays, they try to mediate the problem. They try to talk you out of having the problem. They try to, you know, do their buffering instead of just filing the complaints so that the discrimination no longer is an issue. You know, and I think that that's pacification, and we've done that. And we've done it to the point where Americans don't even know that they have the right to file complaints or to go to their political leaders and say, audit this organization or audit your relationships or I want accountability. They don't know that they can use those words, and that's a direct demand to somebody that you basically elected and appointed as a leader. I mean, they have a duty to do that. I mean, everything that we sit down and ask for, we do know to keep notes and to send it to them and to directly ask again in writing, because they won't give us what they promise unless we put it in writing. We have to hold them accountable, and Americans need to be taught how to do that. People that live in this country, we need to know the rules of engagement, and a lot of our dialogue has been around civic education. I know this month, or if not the beginning of February, we will be having a civil rights workshop with a law firm, with some people from the Portland Law Collective and the National Lawyers Guild. I mean, we need that education so that we can deal with these leaderships.
That's right. Well, we also need it to take over.
Well, that's how you deal with the leaderships. You turn them into workers.
Building the leadership, because I don't think these people do respond to it.
They don't.
Know? And we need to make people respond to it.
Yeah, and we need to hold people accountable. I know that in Mexico, the communities are tired of the corruption, not only of the elected officials, you know, the mayors, you know, the senators, and they are taking over, you know, with people's, you know, police, you know, to resolve the problems. They are very easy, you know. We don't need to, as U.S. citizens, we don't need to give Mexico, with the Merida Initiative, you know, $400 $250 million every year so they can fight the drug cartels. The people know in each community who are the drug lords, and they know how to go get them, apprehend them, put them in jail, you know, confiscate, you know, the money, and that's one step ahead to resolve this problem. We know that there is a lot of young people in Mexico that are looking for jobs. There is no jobs in Mexico. You know, there is not many opportunities also, you know, to go to school, to buy books, to register, to graduate, especially if there is a war against, you know, students as there is now. You know, there is hundreds of thousands of students who have come to support solidarity to the movement of the 43 because they've been retaliated against just because they're standing up for rural students.
Well, as you were saying, you know, that I mean, these are world movements. I know that the Palestinians from Gaza were don't shoot, you know, hands up. This solidarity, who knows more than people that are suffering all over the world?
Right.
And this is an incredible movement. We're just about running out of time here, so I want to ask you, is there anything else you would like to just sort of sign off with and say how people can get involved?
Well, to get involved with our group, you just need to go to the Facebook page. It's Don't Shoot Portland. Like that page, share it. Come out to some of our marches. You're welcome to come to our organizing meetings. We're clearly transparent. A lot of our stuff that we've been doing over the last couple of months is online. You can Google us and check out some cool streams. We're on Twitter at Don't Shoot PDX. We have a new Tumblr. Just, you know, follow the movement. We're looking forward to February because it's going to be the legislative session. It's going to be a long one. Starts February 2nd through July 11th. And we plan on being very active in the legislature. We want to get a special prosecutor assigned, and we know that we need their power to help get that energy into the Attorney General's office so that the governor can make the appointment, or however that works. But I know that's part of the system of how that happens. And then there's a lot of root cause issues that we know are the components that lead into poverty and crime in our communities. So we'll be out there on the front line supporting grassroots organizations that are fighting for change.
And you know, just I just want to invite everyone, you know, to, you know, if you want more updates on what's happening in Mexico, please follow the Somos 43, we are 43. They're doing an amazing job. Also, you know, 15 now, and also, you know, on February 11, we're going to be again on the state capitol interpreting, you know, everything in Spanish. So tell your friends who speak Spanish that don't be silent, speak up.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Teresa and Maria. Good to see both of you here. And people keep checking in with Veterans for Peace Forum. I do this every month on the fourth Saturday of the month, and we welcome you to come back and join us. Thank you all.